Dear children, come back to online classes. Today we are going to see the topic how do we periodize in history. In 1817, James Mill, a Scottish economist and political philosopher, published a three-volume work, that is a history of British India. So in this he actually divided Indian history into three periods, that is Hindu, Muslim and British. This periodization came to be widely accepted. So there was a problem in this way of looking at Indian history. What is that problem? We will see. Why do we try and divide history into different periods? We do so in an attempt to capture the periodization characteristics of a time, its central features as they appear to us. So, the terms through which we periodize, that is demarcate, separate, the differences between periods become important. They reflect our ideas about the past. They show how we see the significance of the change from one period to the next. So, actually, by demarcating the difference between periods, it became very important because they reflect our ideas about the past. They show how we see the importance of the change from one period to the next period. Mill thought that all Asian societies were at a lower level of civilization than Europe. Actually, Mill thought Asian societies were more inferior than the Europe. According to his telling of history, before the British came to India, Hindus and Muslim despots ruled the country. Religious intolerance, caste taboos, and superstitious practices dominated social life. British rule, Mill felt, could civilize India. So, British they think that Indians were not civilized, so they have to civilize India. To do this, it was necessary to introduce European manners, arts, institutions, and laws in India. Mill, in fact, suggested that the British should conquer all the territories in India to ensure the enlightenment and happiness of the Indian people. For India was not capable of progress without British help. So, in this way, British want to introduce European manners, arts, institutions, and laws in India, and they also suggested that British should conquer all the territories and control all the territories in India to ensure the enlightenment and happiness of the Indian people. So they think that India was not capable to progress without their help. In this idea of history, British rule represented all the forces of progress and civilization. The period before British rule was one of the darkness. Can such a conception be accepted today? So British what actually they think that before they came, before they ruled India, it was one of the darkness period. So let us see. In any case, we can refer to any period of history as Hindu or Muslim. Did not a variety of faiths exist simultaneously in these periods? Why should we characterize an age only through the religion of the rulers of the time? That is here Hindu and Muslims. To do so is to suggest that the lives and practices of the others do not really matter. We should also remember that even rulers in ancient India did not all share the same faith. Moving away from the British classification, historians have usually divided India into ancient, medieval, and modern. This division too has its problem. It is a periodization that is borrowed from the West, where the modern period was associated with the growth of all the forces of modernity. So, here modern period was associated with the growth of all the forces of modernity, science, reason, democracy, liberty, and equality. Medieval was a term used to describe a society where these features of modern society did not exist. Can we uncritically accept this characterization of the modern period to describe the period of our study? As you will see in this book, under British rule, people did not have equality, freedom, or liberty, nor was the period one of economic growth and progress. Many historians therefore refer to this period as colonial. So, children, you have understood that in under British rule, people did not have any equality, freedom, nor the period was one of economic growth and progress. It has so many historians therefore refer to this period as colonial. Now, what is colonial? In this book, you will read about the way the British came to conquer the India and establish their rule, subjugating local Nawabs and Rajas. You will see how they established control over the economy and society, collected revenue to meet all their expenses, brought the goods they wanted at low prices, produced crops they needed for export, and you will understand the changes that came about as a consequence. You will also come to know about the changes British rule brought about in values and tastes, customs and practices. When the subjugation of one country by another leads to these kinds of political, economic, social, and cultural changes, we refer to the process as colonization. So here in India, colonial government was the British government. You will, however, find that all classes and groups did not experience these changes in the same way. That is why the book is called Our Pasts in the plural. Now, administration produces records. So, for everything, every incident, we keep records. So, one important source is the official records of the British administration. The British believed that the act of writing was important. So, every instruction, plan, policy, decision, agreement, investigation had to be clearly written up. So, once this was done, things could be properly studied and debated. So, children, for everything we should keep a record so that there should be some evidences in future about any instruction, plan, policy, decision, agreement, investigation. That is why it has to be clearly written up. Once this was done, things could be properly studied and debated. So we can keep the record to be studied and debated properly. This conviction produced an administrative cultures of memos, noting and reports. The British also felt that all important documents and letters needed to be carefully preserved. So they set up record rooms attached to all administrative institutions, the village Tehsildar's office, the collectorate, the commissioner's office, the provincial secretariats, the law courts. All of these institutions had their record rooms. Special important records, specialized institutions like archives and museums were established. Letters and memos that moved from one branch of the administration to another in the early years of the 19th century can still be read in the archives where it is preserved and kept. You can also study the notes and reports that district officials prepared or the instructions and directives that were sent by officials at the top to provincial administrators. In the early years of the 19th century, these documents were carefully copied out and beautifully written by calligraphists. Calligraphists are those who are specialized in the art of beautiful writing. By the middle of the 19th century, with the spread of printing, multiple copies of these records were printed as proceedings of each government department. So here in the picture we can see the National Archives of India, which came up in the 1920s. When New Delhi was built, the National Museum and the National Archives were both located close to the Viceregal Palace. This location reflects the importance these institutions had in British children. From this periodization of James Mill, we have seen that James Mill tried to divide Indian history into Hindu and Muslims and Christians period. This periodization is based on religious line that there was a phase for which the Hindus were the rulers and others were ruled. Then came the phase of the Muslims or Christians, that is Britishers. He had a colonial bent of mind and thought Asians to have poorly civilized. He thought Europeans to be superior. So, in fact, through this periodization, he tried to divide the people with their own specific identity, which was not a truth. So during the Muslim rule, there were thousands of Hindu kings. The same was the case during the Christian period when India had thousands of local Hindu and Muslim princely states. So this is not a proper periodization of Indian history. So this is the problem with the periodization of Indian history that James Mill. Here the British preserve official documents. British were of the opinion that to write about things and events is very important. By doing so, one gets a chance to study things and events and discuss that things. So here we have seen the word Tehsildar's office. Tehsildar here means a local administrative officer that kept record of revenue during the British rule in India.